Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for your Friday night news show, and we're also going to be talking all about the Aston Villa versus Leeds United game as well. Also, apologies for the late start today. Unfortunately, the streaming software I use keeps finding it to the wrong stream. So cheers for that, streaming software. You are I'm just pleased with you. I'm just really happy that you've done that. So thanks. What a way to ruin the Friday night show, eh? No, but yeah, let's get into the show, of course. Obviously, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff massively helps the channel. And yeah, apologies for the late start. You guys know I don't like starting late, and I very rarely do. But unfortunately, you know, I'm going to fire Realstream. What an annoying piece of software that is. Anyway, SLY says late. Yep, mate, I do apologise. Apologies, hands up. It was probably my fault in truth. But there we are. But as I said, we have got Mike Keegan to talk about today. He has released what I can only describe as a bit of a blockbuster sort of piece today, article in the Daily Mail, of course. And for anyone that always says, because every time we talk about Mike Keegan and these big sort of pieces that he does, everyone goes, it's the Daily Mail, blah, 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 blah. If this isn't proof, again, that Mike Keegan is quite clearly the journalist of choice for the San Francisco 49ers, I'm not really even sure what you guys believe anymore. He is obviously the mouthpiece for the San Francisco 49ers. He was the one that reported the story in the summer about the fact that the manager might get sacked then. He's the one with this new information today as well, where he talks all about Daniel Farke, all about his new contract, all about the summer transfer window as well. There's absolutely loads to get into with it, in truth. I honestly don't know if we'll even get onto the Aston Villa versus Leeds United preview, but I will try and make some time for it, but it should be a long show tonight. Also as well, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massively help the channel. I've now hit 1,900 subscribers, so I'm only 100 away from getting to that 2,000 goal. So if you could do that, subscribe, that would be really helpful. And also if you could like as well, it boosts it in the algorithm, lets other people see this sort of content, and just really fundamentally helps me out. Anyway, let's start let's start with the Daniel Farke stuff that he talks about, because for me, this is the main stuff in the piece. And actually, when I've seen talk online about this piece from Mike Keegan, I haven't seen a lot said about the sort of the developments with Daniel Farke in this piece. And for me, it's the biggest story, the developments around Daniel Farke. It really is. I think that's the most important story. But the situation with, of course, Daniel Farke is that apparently, after 11 games, after that Nottingham Forest game, the club were looking at the idea of moving him on. And he basically was in a meeting with investors and the 49ers themselves, where his job was absolutely on the line. He basically had to fight for his job. Obviously, we know after that he had Aston Villa, Man City, I believe he had Chelsea and then Liverpool. And obviously after that Aston Villa game, I feel like the majority of the fan base was against him. You can go back and see my channel. I never actually went Daniel Farke out this season, but obviously a lot did. And at the time, I could understand why. And I think at the time, everyone felt that we were heading that direction. We had Chelsea at home, we had Liverpool at home, and I don't think people could see a way out from it, if I'm being totally honest. But luckily for us, and luckily for Daniel Farke, we have seen a way out of it, and now we're in a good position. But what I think is interesting about this piece is that obviously at the time when that was going on, there was this report about he had these few games to save his job. Now, that was obviously true looking back, and we talked about it on the channel at the time, I remember, but it obviously does that. When you cover these stories, we never know if there's sort of truth in it, but that was obviously true. But what's more interesting about this story, by the way, is the stream working fine? Because mine doesn't seem like it is, but is the stream all good, people? Just so we know. Yeah, it looks like it is working. But it's, I always have the stream up on my phone just to make sure everything's going correctly. But yeah, it looks like it is. Anyway, what is interesting regarding the sort of this story more than anything is this stuff about the new contract. And basically, Mike Keegan has said in the piece today, there is no new deal on the table for Daniel Farke at this moment in time. That isn't the case. And now what's surprising about this to me is, for anyone who doesn't know, for the record, Daniel Farke's got 1 year left on his contract in the summer. Now, usually, as a football club, you don't go into the last year of a manager's contract because it's unbelievably hard in terms of recruiting players, in terms of, as I said, bringing players into the club, because naturally nobody wants to sign up to a club when they don't know who the manager's going to be at the end of the season. That's the situation that never usually happens. That is a constant bother if that isn't rectified. And I find it interesting now with where we are in the league that there isn't any discussion going on about Daniel Farke's future. And it got me thinking actually about it, and I was thinking about this on the sort of on the car journey home today, when I sort of looked at this piece and listened about this piece, and I was thinking to myself, I can sort of see where they're going with this, because the 49ers, as we know, are data people. They are absolutely unbelievably intense on data. That's how it goes. And truthfully, that is the way of the modern club. And this has come from the likes of Brighton's, Brentford, who've used that sort of the data that they've had used gambling, and then they've obviously put it into the football club. So that's their sort of strategy, and that's now universal across the Premier League. It's all a data strategy. But I think the 49ers will look at Daniel Farke this season, and I think that they'll think that this has been a good success. I think if we stay up, that's the success, isn't it, if we stay in the division. The question I've got is with him, and I think this is something that people are probably surprised I'm going to say this, because you guys know I argue all the time and argue for Daniel Farke's case. I think the thing that's killing him at this moment in time is his away form. I think it's killing him. We haven't won an away game since September now. We haven't won in 10 away games. Now, we're not losing at this moment in time. We're actually just drawing a lot of away games. But to only win one away game, if he goes to the end of the season and doesn't win another away game, I think he could be in a bit of trouble, because if you're going to progress, say next year for Leeds United. So this year it was all about survival. That's what we're all aware of. Next year we're trying to not be in a relegation battle. That's the aim. Probably like 14th, 13th, 15th, somewhere in that region, but hopefully not in a relegation battle. And that's for me the next success of Leeds United. People can talk about Europe. People can talk about other things. The next success is 13th, 14th, 15th. I think the club will look at this and go, if he doesn't win away from home, we can't achieve that, because you can't just, even if you win and you're unbelievable at home, like Leeds United have been this season, you can't just rely on your home form if you want to finish further up the league. You have to get something in your away games. And I think they'll look at sort of what Daniel Farke has done so far this season, and I think that is what's in the side of the head. I do believe that. And they also go on to talk in this piece about sort of where they feel Leeds United are at with relegation. And for anyone who isn't aware, the sort of the data statistics and the data points at this moment in time give Leeds United around about an 11% chance of Leeds United getting relegated this season. But apparently in the club, and the club sources think it's more like 20%. And look, and I think there's stuff behind that. There's a style of play getting found out. There's injuries, etc. That will all be sort of ventured into the statistics. Now, I imagine the Leeds United have probably gone more detail than likes of Opta, etc. on this in terms of breaking down data to sort of revive an outcome based on the stuff we know about Leeds United. And look, they obviously think it's about 20%. So that's a really good position for Leeds United to be in. I think everyone would have taken that probably at the start of the season, or most fans would have anyway. But I think this stuff with Daniel Farke is really interesting. I'm actually interested, if you're watching live now, where are you at with Daniel Farke? I've been pro Daniel Farke, as you're all aware, and I've backed him and backed him and backed him. And even when it's looked ridiculous to not back him, I have backed him. But I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking, he's done a fantastic job. He's got us promoted. He's kept us in the Premier League. But is he the manager to make the next step when our away form has been so bad? Now, people will go, oh yeah, but it's the Premier League and it's hard to win away from him, and that's absolutely fine. But actually, if you look back at the 2 championship seasons as well, we had the same problems. We actually had the same problems in the championship as well. We were, I believe in the first year, we were 4th or 5th for away form, and I believe in the second year, we were 4th or 5th for away form. Now, that sounds good, but we were a team that were fighting for the top 2. So them years, it still doesn't compete with how good we were at home, and that's all we were. When we got promoted last year, it was based on home form. It wasn't based on how good we were away from home. We've never been good away from home under Daniel Farke, but we've been fantastic at home. And I just think if we're going to make the next step in the Premier League with Daniel Farke, is he the manager who's, when he's got such awful away form, is he the manager that's going to be able to take us forward? Because we are limiting where we're going to finish in the league consistently if we're only winning home games. And realistically, the only game we've won away from home this year is Wolves. Now, that sounds ridiculously negative from me, and something that you probably wouldn't expect coming out of my mouth, but it's just me thinking through it and sort of where the 49ers are looking from, really. Gibson Whiteson, I think he's earned the right to have a crack at it. I still back him. Yeah, I do. I still back him. And truthfully, if they didn't give him a new contract, I would kind of be surprised. I'm just trying to sort of, this is kind of me just thinking in my own head, really, and sort of sharing my thoughts with you guys about why they'd look at sort of moving him on, when on paper it looks like it's for me, it looks like such a decent situation to be in with where we're at this moment. Think Farke goes in the summer. Think Fabregas or Corberan will come in. Like, Corberan, maybe. I think Fabregas is a 2. I don't see Fabregas being someone that's going to take the Leeds United job. I think his next move is to probably someone in the top 6. Like, I think he's someone that maybe Liverpool could go, could go with him somewhere like that. I think we're probably. I just don't think his next job will be Leeds United. If I'm being totally honest, I think that would be a really interesting appointment, but I just don't see that being the step really. Neither of them have proved themselves in terms of Corberán or Fabregas. Yeah, they haven't. But have they got better ceilings as a manager than Daniel Farke? And this is, as I said, this is all going to be a surprise to you guys because Ollie, I know you've been in for years, mate, since we started the channel basically. And I remember you coming on talking after the Aston Villa game, I believe, and you were like, "How can you still possibly back this guy?" And I understood that at the time, as you know, because you watch the shows as well. But I was just of the opinion that this year was best sticking with Farke. Now it sounds like in the boardroom that's what Parag's viewpoint was, and maybe a few others. But it sounds a bit to me like the investors and the people behind the scenes, a lot of them putting in the money, and maybe not as on board on Daniel Farke as Parag. Well, I've always felt Parag's the one that backs Daniel Farke in the higher ups at Leeds United. He's always talked really glowingly about Daniel Farke, and I know that's his job, but it's the characteristics that he talks about, and he compares himself a lot to Daniel Farke in the way he operates. He always talks about, he likes Daniel Farke's calm demeanour, and that's something he prides himself on. He likes how calm he is in certain situations, and he feels that's how leaders should behave. And I think that springs to me obvious, because that's an actual, rather than just saying I like him, he's doing a good job. When you name characteristics like Parag does, it shows to me that there's more in depth as to what he's saying, and that he almost actually believes it. This is the way I read it anyway. So I think he's got the backing of Parag, but I think there's people who are also investing in the club, and we know the 49ers are a big investment group. It's not just Parag, and I think there is feelings around them that Daniel Farke may be taken too far. That's just my read of it. I also do know as well, and I'm sure a lot of you guys know this, that when we were going through that point in time, I do know there was a manager that was getting heavily linked to Leeds United. I don't think he got mentioned too much around about that sort of point, but there was a manager that I believe if we lost to Chelsea and lost to Liverpool, that they had a manager in line. I don't want to say who it is because I don't really want to. So I don't know if I should be saying it or not, but I do know that there was a manager from all accounts lined up if we were to lose them games, if I'm being honest. So, they were there with it, because I know a lot of you guys want him gone as well. Ollie says, evening, sorry I'm late. No worries, mate. Not worries at all. Gibson White says, having a budget helps, taking the next step, horse for course. You're right. And the truth is with this, is that Gibson White, is that we have, for me, we still have one of the weakest squads in the division. And that's not negative, because we're doing really well as a collective at this moment in time. But in terms of individuals, we've talked about this a lot on the channel. We don't have a superstar in the team. And what I mean by a superstar is a Jared Bowen or an Elliot Anderson. We haven't got someone like that in the team. We've got good players, but do you know when we had Bielsa in charge, even in the first season, we had Rafinha, who was an absolute superstar in the team. We don't have someone like that, and we don't have that next level quality that them teams have. And I think that limits where we're at this moment in time, and I think that's what you've got to bear in mind when we have these conversations about Farke, because truthfully, if he does stay up, he kind of deserves it based on performances. But what a lot of people will say, and probably what the 49ers will look at with this, is you don't give a manager a new contract on what he's done in the past for you. You do it based on what you think he's going to do in the future. And the point of the matter is with Daniel Farke, yes, he's done a fantastic job, and I agree with all this. And truthfully, maybe because of sentimentality, but I would give Daniel Farke a new contract, and I still would be surprised if they don't. But as I said, it's important to know in football and in business in general, you don't give people contracts on what they've done in the past. It's what they're going to do in the future. So it's like when you appoint a new manager, you go, right, okay, he's done this in his career, but is he going to do this for me now? Well, that's what the conversation will be. Gibson White says, having a budget. Yeah, I've read that one. Ernie says, I can respect your take on Farke and what might happen. Thank you, mate. Thank you. Hi, mate. I'm totally with DF. He can get us a stable Premier League team, but eventually we'll move on. Yeah, look, I as I said, I'm of the opinion that we shouldn't move Daniel Farke on. The whole conversation that I was talking about earlier was just more, and I think it's an interesting conversational piece as to sort of where we're at with Daniel Farke, because I do know, and I see it in the chat a lot of the time, every time we get a bad result online, it completely... Truthfully, as soon as the team news gets released, every single time it's Daniel Farke out basically trending on Twitter. And as soon as we get any sort of bad result, Daniel Farke trending out on Twitter. That's not normal for a fan base, by the way. That isn't what Sunderland fans are doing at this moment in time. That isn't what, I don't know, other Bournemouth fans are doing. I know that's a bad example, but because we're a different complexion in terms of football club. But that isn't what normal football clubs do in terms of fan base. But Daniel Farke has still got a lot of Daniel Farke critics in this fan base, and I think this is based on what's happened at Norwich, and I think it's also based on there's this feeling that he's almost stumbled upon this system, I don't believe in this as much, but there's a feeling that I think he's stumbled on the system as much, and it's working. But when it gets figured out, can they change it? And this is what comes back into this conversation that was in this piece as well about the odds and the odds of Leeds United go down. Where again the odds say in the optics that we're about 11%, and obviously the 49ers deem that more to be the sort of 20%, which is basically double in it in truth. If we had got battered at City, I reckon we'd have sacked him then. I personally want him to give him a crack at it, but don't extend his contract. See, this is tricky though, isn't it, Ollie? Because I get what you're saying, mate. I get what you're saying. I think that will emulate a lot of opinion in the fan base. But I think it's hard to buy players in the summer if we've got a manager going into his final year's contract. And also, a lot of you will know what's going on with sort of Fulham this year, what's happened with Glasner this year as well. When a manager's not got left on his contract and people know he's going in the summer, like in next summer, for example, it's harder to motivate your team because they know you're not going to be there. So you can't. For me, I hate, truthfully, managers going into the last year of their contract. It didn't work with David Moyes at Forest. I think Fulham, to be fair, have recovered under Marco Silva, but maybe it's a different complexion there. And a few other managers where they've gone into the last year of the contract. Everybody knows they're leaving in the summer. Glasner this year, and it just becomes an absolute car crash. And there's the conversation all the time: is he going to sign a new deal? Is he not? And it goes on and on and on, and it just creates real unrest in the football club. So for me, if the 49ers are going to sack him or remove him, it would have to be in the summer. And we can't go into another season where he's got less on his contract for me. They've got to either back him or sack him in the summer. Richard says, if Man City or Liverpool manager was at Leeds, could they do a better job than the squad we have? This is what I mean, mate. Because I'm not. People might think this is a mad take. I'm not sure they could. I am not sure they could. I'm not saying that Arne Slot's having a bad season. I think people are going to rightly mention that. But say Arteta, who's having a better season with obviously Arsenal. If Arteta came into Leeds United, do I think he'd do better than Daniel Farke? Maybe, but I don't think we'd be getting in the top 10 or anything like that. I don't think that would happen at all. I'm truthfully, I think the squad's. I think we are where we should be at this moment, and arguably, if anything, we're probably overachieving with the squad we have. Because have we got a worse squad than Forest? Yes. Are we above Forest? Yes. Have we got a worse squad than Spurs? Yes. Are we above Spurs? Yes, we are. That's probably not how it should line up in truth. First 2 seasons we DF, then move on. Fair enough. I'm a Farke fan, to be honest. He's a good guy, and he's got a good plan. Matty Cash is the cards tomorrow. What are you thinking the scoreline can be? I'm worried it might be a 2-1 loss tomorrow. I'll talk about that later in the video, mate, but we'll get onto that game. Don't you worry about it, mate. DF will help us consolidate ourselves in the Premier League when we're ready to make the next step forward. If we get Xabi Alonso, I'll be happy. Well, so would I, mate, but I'm not sure that'll happen. Don't think we'll lose tomorrow. I've skipped all the comments by accident. Oh, no. I'm more than happy with Daniel Farke, fair enough. I was 100% Farke out after Forest away until December. He did fantastically to turn it around, but still has major concerns such as away form, subs, etc. I can see Parag having to sack him. Yeah, maybe, mate. I do think that Parag is his biggest backer, though, and I think that's why he's still in a job, if I'm being totally honest. Because I think there was obviously people in the club that wanted to sack him around about when you did. Gibson White says, who's going to replace him? Is there better out there willing to take the Leeds job? We have to be realistic. This is the thing with it, because sometimes I'm not saying that there's not better managers on paper there, but this is, as we always say, football's played on grass, it's not played on paper. And there's been so many times when a manager's gone into a football club, it looks like a fantastic appointment and it's not worked out. Like, this might be a bad example, but it's just one off the top of my head. Liam Manning did a fantastic job last season at Bristol City, an unbelievable job at Bristol City. Got him in the top 6, it was fantastic. He looked like a really good upcoming coach. He looked like he was going to have a lot in the game, skin in the game going forward. He then went into Norwich City, and I think everyone around the continent said in England said that looks like a fantastic appointment on paper. He's done a fantastic job at Bristol City, going into Norwich. How can that possibly be wrong? Done well in the league, etc. And it was an absolute disaster. And it took them sacking him and bringing in Philip Clement for it to change the complexion at the club. And now actually Manning's managing League One with obviously Huddersfield. And that's what I mean about there's managers that look like on paper they'd be really good appointments, but it doesn't always work out like that. And sometimes you've got to be cautious of these things. However, the flip side to that is if you look at, say, Bournemouth, they stayed up with Gary O'Neill. Basically, everyone outside of Bournemouth fans said that they should keep Gary O'Neill. They sacked him and they brought in Iriola, and they've kind of never looked back since. So there is the alternative argument to that as well. There really is. It's just about its recruitment, isn't it? That categorically. Thing is, Farke knows Leeds, and he's a great believer if you don't change things unless you have to. West Ham got rid of Moyes, then backfired and give him a 3-year contract, pay for him. Yeah, look, I think that's fair. Look, as I said, it's this classic situation, mate, Stephen, isn't it, where it's be careful what you wish for, and I think that's definitely applicable to the Daniel Farke situation, and I've kind of always felt that. Gerdav says, I was born in 2004 and been watching the league since League One days. The Bielsa days are the best I've ever seen Leeds play. DF is taking us to the Prem and keeping us up as being the best we've had since Bielsa. Yeah, it has. He's been one of the better managers we've had in the last 20 years, in truth. Josh says, it'll probably be some random fellow we've never heard of, like a Brighton sort of model, potentially. Ollie says, I have a big concern that the investors will want a big name. I can see them wanting Gerrard, Gary McAllister, or another Red Bull coach like Rose. Potentially, mate. I think there's something in that. I don't disagree with that. I just wonder who that sort of big name coach they think they could get would be, because I've seen Cesc Fabregas mentioned a lot, and I get that because he's having a fantastic time with Como. They're playing brilliant football at this moment, overachieving in that league, although they have spent good money. But he does look like a really good and up and coming manager. I just don't. I wouldn't go for. I wouldn't do Fabregas, and I would, but I just don't think he'll come to the club. Farke is more in tune with Leeds than the vast majority of managers we've had. His commitment is unwavering. Yeah, that's a good point, mate. And I think that Daniel Farke has showed a level of calmness and a level of composure and professionalism in this whole time, because there has been points. His job was obviously getting spoken about in the summer, as we're all aware. It was then quite clearly getting, as even Mike Keegan said today, was getting spoke about after 11 games, after that Forest game, and he had to sort of back his job. However, if you look around at his press comments at that moment in time, although he was getting asked about his future, etc., and it was being talked about all online and all in the media and all by the club, he never looked panicked by it, and he carried on doing his thing, and he showed professionalism, and he didn't start saying stupid stuff, and I appreciate that. I think that's how managers should behave, and I appreciate him doing that, because I think it's harder. It's easier said than done. That it's like if I had an absolutely awful, say I got absolutely unwavering hate, and then I had to come on here and talk to you guys, I would struggle. I think that'd be difficult, especially if the questions are coming in hard and you're in a room with people. I think that would be very difficult. And I think you've got to be a certain character to be able to deal with that and deal with it in the professional manner that Daniel Farke has done. And I think fair play to him, because they do a lot of news. I mean, I was even listening to Ange Postecoglou today, and he was talking about the fact that the last season he did at Spurs, he did 130 interviews. Now, naturally, Daniel Farke is not doing that many, but he's doing a lot. So to not lose your composure and to constantly be very calm in press conferences every time, he's a real skill set, and it's a real skill to have. I think our players are built for Farke. Technically not the best, but good in our system. Yeah, I think that's fair, Josh. And that's the thing is, if Daniel Farke keeps us up this season, do I think he'll probably keep us up next season? Yes. If we brought in a new manager, do I think they'll keep us up? Probably. But we could end up going the other way and getting relegated. But we also could get the upside and it going really well. So it's where you've got to balance it naturally. Who was the manager you thought we had lined up after City, Chelsea, Liverpool, or can't you say? I don't know, mate. I don't want to. I don't want to say, because I don't know if I can, if I'm being honest. So I'd rather err on the side of caution. I'm not trying to do the debate here, and I also never said it at the time, by the way, because I don't want to I don't want to come on here and say that I'm in the know and all this crap, because truthfully, it annoys me when people do it. I just don't like it. Like, you either know or you don't. And I didn't know. I wasn't confident enough to sort of out and say it, if that makes sense. Do you think Farke will want to go to a back four next season? Do I think Farke want to go back to back four? I think in his ideal principles he would. But I honestly don't know. I think it's a really good question. That's a really good question. I have to ever think about that. Anyway, what else was in this? There's some people going happy about sort of this transfer spend, and basically, Mike Keegan said there is a pot of about £100 million for Leeds United to spend in the transfer window, and I've seen a lot of people online going buzzing about this and about how fantastic this is. Truthfully, I'm not there. I disagree with this. Not that I think it's not okay, but I don't think the 100 million in today's climate is that something to be that jumping up and down about. I think 200 million is ridiculous, but 100 million I think standard now for the Premier League, and that sounds utterly ridiculous to say, but I don't think that's a stretch anymore, and I think that's a fair thing to say now. I think I would expect at least Leeds United to spend another £100 million this summer. I think anything less would not be doing enough. We've got to spend another 100 million. So yes, it's nice that we're doing that. I was kind of hoping it'd be more 120, maybe 130 million, but it looks like it is going to be around the 100 million mark from what Mike Keegan's saying. But yeah, I don't think I'm as giddy as other people when I see the 100 million, if I'm being totally honest. It's kind of what I expect. I wouldn't expect anything less. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that, if I'm being honest. What else is there to talk about in that? I think we've got through the most of it. Use 100 million to get Xabi. Mate, Xabi Alonso's not coming, if I'm being totally honest, mate. He's not coming to Leeds. As much as I'd like it, he ain't coming. He also does play 3 at the back as well, so, maybe. But no, he's not. Anyway, let's move on and talk a bit about Aston Villa versus Leeds United then, because that is part of in the video title, so we better talk about it, haven't we? I've also lost a subscriber on today's stream, so if someone could subscribe to get myself back, that would be brilliant. Anyway, Leeds United and away. There was a stat that went up today about Leeds United's away form going into this Aston Villa game, and I'm sure you've seen it online. But it was we haven't won our last 10, and we talked about this earlier in the show, and obviously with the conversation about Daniel Farke. And obviously this is something that Leeds United are struggling with at the moment. I think we're playing well away from home at times, a lot of the time, but I don't think we've got the nous yet to see these games out. I think I highlight Everton, I highlight Sunderland, I highlight Brentford. All these games I think we could have won, and we didn't do, and I thought we were the better team in all them games. But we don't seem to have that winning edge to us. To get it over the line. And I think sometimes we get into a position away from home where it's almost like, wow, we're getting something away from home. We've got to just hold on for love and money. And I don't think we need to do that, because I think we are a better, even when I talk about sort of where the team's at this moment in terms of player quality, I do think we're better than that. We're not a League One team playing away from home, if I'm being honest. So look, this is going to be a tricky game, Villa away. Of course it is. It's not even really a debate about how tricky this is going to be. The only thing I would say about Villa is if you're ever going to play Villa this season, except the start of the season, this is probably as good a time to play them as possible. They're not scoring many goals at this moment. They've actually only scored 1 in the last 3 at home, and it was an own goal from Hinshelwood right at the end from a Tyrone Mings header, and the other 2 was a loss against Brentford where they had 10 men. Where Brentford had 10 men, and also a loss at home to Everton, 1-0 as well. So do I think Leeds United can get something in this game? I do. And I think what we have shown, although we're not winning away games, is we're not losing many either. I think have we drawn 4 of our last 5 away from home, I think now. Obviously, the Newcastle, they only lost there. And we are picking up decent draws away from home. And we've shown Chelsea away, Liverpool away, etc., that we can go to these big stadiums and get points. And I think we can do. And especially, as I said, with the form Villa are on at this moment in time, I think that's a real positive. And then when you look into the team news with Leeds United, I think this is another positive for Leeds United. We've only got Noah Okafor missing. And truthfully, if I'm looking through the team at this moment in time, you've got Noah Okafor wouldn't be in my team anyway. I think we should be going to the plan that we've seen at sort of Everton away that's gone really well, Newcastle away, the plan was well. I know we threw it away at the end, but the plan was well. So the team I'm looking at is Darlow in goal, Bogle right wing back, Rodon, Biel, Strauch. It's nice to have them back 3 back. Goodmanson left wing back. Stack comes straight back in for me with Ampadu and Gruev. And then I will play Aronson behind DCL, and that will be my lineup. So I do think that Leeds United can get something in this game. I do, and I think this is an opportunity for Leeds United to get something in this game. I knew that was going to come up, Ollie. I've just seen it about your team. But look, this is not going to be easy. However, of course, I think the saving grace this weekend is that other teams have got tricky games outside of probably West Ham. So West Ham play Bournemouth at home. Forest play Liverpool, which I think obviously will be tricky. I know they did look like they were on a bit of a better course with obviously the performance away at Fenerbahce. However, I always say, truthfully, European competitions are not a good sign for how good teams are at this moment in time. Man United and Spurs were in the final of the Europa League last year, and they were both absolutely crap all season. So I don't think that's a really good sign that they're massively better. I just think it's more a sign that Fenerbahce are crap, if I'm being honest. And I think there'll be a much bigger test against Liverpool. Of course, Liverpool have had the whole week off against Forest as well, which is very uncommon that Liverpool wouldn't have a game, and obviously Nottingham Forest would. So that's another benefit for us. And I think Liverpool will probably win that game. And then Spurs obviously have got Arsenal, which again you would expect Spurs probably beat Arsenal. In truth, obviously Igor Tudor's and come out and said a lot of things, and Arsenal may be a bit tricky at this moment in time. But I think would expect Arsenal to win that game still. It's just this West Ham game, innit? And I think this is where I think as Leeds United fans, and I've said this a few times, we've just got to be a bit cautious this weekend, I think, because I think there's easily a situation. I think it's likely this weekend that the gap from 6 points will be closed this weekend. I think that's totally plausible. I expect it, if I'm being honest. I think it's okay to expect that we're not going to match West Ham's result when they've got Bournemouth at home and we've got Aston Villa away. But I think what we've got to expect is, and what we've got to sort of get to, is that the last 10 games, as we know, are good for Leeds United. And it's all about just getting to that spot outside the relegation zone. Yes, it's going to get a bit tetchy. Yes, it's going to be further away than it is. But it is going to happen, and we are going to get a bit closer. But we are getting closer to where we want to be in the last 10 games as well. So we've just got to. I think we've just got to be a bit calm this weekend, and I call for calm. And that's kind of where I feel, because we are doing well. We have only lost 2 in 14 now, and we're on a good run. And if we can get a point in this game, I think that'd be a fantastic result, of course. And I think we can. I do actually think we'll lose the game, if I'm being honest. I think we will lose the game 2-1. I don't think it'll be an absolute hammering, but I think we'll just fall short. But I do think there's cries for optimism, and hopefully Bournemouth can do something against West Ham and upset the apple cart a bit there. And then if we can match the result by us both losing, then truthfully, that's a fantastic weekend for us. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I do think the fact that the Villa midfield is out as well is a huge benefit for us. Obviously, they've still got really good replacements. They've still got Douglas Luiz in there. They've still got Andre Onana in there. They've still got good players in there who can cause Leeds United a lot of problems. Of course they can. And I would expect they do actually cause Leeds United a lot of problems. However, their midfield's out. I would say our midfield's our biggest strength. So with our midfield fully fit and their midfield out, I do think it levels up the playing field. And I do think our midfield now is consistent with a level that Aston Villa are at. So I do think we can get something against Aston Villa because of that. And I do think we can dominate them in Villa Park. And obviously, if you do that, there's a good chance you get something from the game. Anyway, let's get into some of your guys' comments. Blow the summer budget on James Trafford. Maybe, mate. I wouldn't hate it. What did the Daily Mail even say about Farke close sacking? They basically said, mate, that after the Forest game, there was a conversation with Daniel Farke about him being sacked. They obviously talked to Daniel Farke, and he basically said, look, it's 11 games. It's not enough to judge, and can you judge me after I've done these next few games? Which is, of course, why at the time it came out that he's got these many games to save his job, and then obviously he did because he beat Chelsea and got a draw with Liverpool. But that's basically what happened. And then, of course, then it's also been reported in there that as well that they haven't sat down yet and talked about a new contract, and he hasn't got long left, as we know. He's only got a year in the summer. Gipton White says, tough game, but McGinn is a big loss for them. We need to go in with a bullish attitude. I agree. They've got no McGinn, they've got no Tielemans, and they've also got no Kamara, which are 3 big misses. And I think actually there's argument Kamara's the biggest miss. If you look at Villa's win rate without Kamara and with Kamara, it's dramatic. He's what Ampadu is to us is almost like what he is to them. He's massively important. He's quite underrated actually, Kamara as well. We have a chance tomorrow. Difficult game obviously, but Brentford and Everton went there and got wins. Newcastle out of form got there and got a win. Yeah, they did beat them in the cup. Obviously they went out of 10 men though. But yeah, I agree. Josh says this is the best time to play Villa in ages. Big opportunity to get something tomorrow. Hope we go into the game and go for it, especially with Stack, Stroke and DJ back. I agree. I think it's a good opportunity, and I think having Stack and Strout back is massive because I don't think Leeds United can get to their optimum level without them two in the team. I think there's others where we can be missing them and we can still get to a near an optimum level. I don't think we can with them two. I think they're so important players. Stack is absolutely so important in that midfield. As we know, set piece delivery is his job. He can run with the midfield. I think he dominates the midfield park. Strout's our only left-footed centre-back, and I think he's massively important to where we build out from the back. They're massively important players. We were never going to get to that level without them two. Jack says, evening, Scott. Evening to you too, Jack. Nice to see you in the chat, mate. Ollie says, Darlow, Rodon, Biol, Strouk, Bogle, Stack, Ampadu, Longstaff, Gabriel Goodmanson, DCL, and Nemecha. My lineup for tomorrow. I've seen so many people, mate, go with DCL Nemecha. I'm interested to see that you've got with Longstaff, though, because I know Longstaff's much more favoured in the fan base than Gruev, but hasn't Gruev just been better recently, in truth? He's also left-footed as well, so the balance kind of works a bit more with him. Evening, Scott, lad, match and together, says Carl. Nice to see you in the chat, Carl, and thanks for the kind words, mate. Gurdev says, it's all about whether he'd be willing to move on loan on transfer. Is this in terms of Trafford, presumably? Does Stack start? I think he does. I think he'll definitely start Stack. Easy for me to say. So yeah, I think he will. I think he will start Stack. Kamara, Cash, and Rogers have done work for Villa boys this season. Yeah, they have. Kamara's been brilliant. Obviously, Cash and Rogers are still in, and they've had really good season themselves. But yeah, you are right. Anyway, thanks all for watching, as always. I've enjoyed Friday Night Show tonight. I like talking about... truthfully, we haven't talked about Daniel Farke for a while. There was a point in time on this channel where you're all aware where it felt like a daily Daniel Farke show rather than a Leeds United show, and truthfully, you get a bit sick of it then. But we haven't talked about it for a while, and it's nice to see where we're at, and it's not as negative about him at this moment, even when we can sort of have nice dialogue about him without sort of there being hate involved in it. So it's been nice and I've enjoyed it. Ollie says, I really like Longstaff, but no chance DF drops Aronson and Grove. Yeah, I don't think he will. Josh says, City don't really care as long as we get a new keeper, to be honest. Anyway, as I said, thanks all for watching, as always. And I will see you tomorrow for the live reaction to Aston Villa versus Leeds United. The reaction's actually been doing much better recently. So yeah, if you could chop in after the game tomorrow and sort of share your thoughts, that's what we do on the channel. Anyway, as I said, thanks all for watching. And if you could like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massively help the channel. As I said, I'm trying to close in on 2,000 subscribers, and I've also just lost a subscriber. So, you know, some guy must hate what I've said today. Anyway, thanks all for watching. Ollie says, Daniel Farke news channel in November. Yeah, it was, mate. It was. Anyway, thanks all for watching, and I will see you tomorrow at about 5 PM after Leeds United get that famous win away at Aston Villa. See you later. See you then. Bye for now.